Good evening, all. Hope you are having a wonderful Monday or had a wonderful Monday. This is our week 8 check-in video. So we are officially halfway through the semester. It was officially halfway as of last Wednesday, I guess you could say. That would have been 7.5 weeks. So halfway through the semester, we are working towards our second essay. We'll be getting that assignment pretty soon. Working our way through Plantation Boy, and from what I can tell of your guys' assignments lately, we are thoroughly enjoying this book, and I am absolutely thrilled. This is perhaps one of the best responses I've got to people reading this novel, so I am excited by your excitement. So before we talk about the coming week, let me get adjusted here. Before we talk about the coming week, let's go over what we did last week, and we'll start with our video responses, which were your assignment was to have picked a historical person, place, or event, and talked about what it was, teaching us about it, and then tying it to our reading in Plantation Boy last week. So from the list that I had given us, we covered nearly everything I had up there. So we had someone talked about the Hawaii Territorial Guard. Someone had a discussion about the Naichi and Okinawans. We had Bula heads discussed. The Big Five were discussed. Everyone kind of touched on Japanese internment camps at some point in their assignments. Lots of us were interested in the 100th Battalion and 442nd Regiment. So we covered a lot of stuff. The one thing we didn't cover in too much detail was the internment camps, I think because a lot of us know more about that than any of the other things. So I'll touch on that a little bit at the end here, but just to go over some of the things that you all shared. So let me just say that I really enjoyed watching your videos this week. Everyone did a really great job. There was a lot of engagement with the text, trying to figure things out, and you all caught on really why I'm having you do this historical research stuff, because if you don't understand something in this book, then it kind of ruins the entire thing. You can't understand one thing if you don't understand something else, and it's a lot of interlinking people, places, and events. So we had our Bula heads, right? Our discussion of Bula heads. It came from Buddha heads, and this was in the letter that Happy Kenji wrote to Toshio after his son was born. And this was Kilohana's post on this, and he brought up a really interesting point of discussion for why the different generations and the different the different groups of Japanese were so separate from each other, right? We had Bula heads or Buddha heads and Katonks, and the local Japanese and the mainland Japanese, and all of them were kind of viewed each other as different groups rather than we're all Japanese, so let's stick together. And this came up in some other people's posts too, with not only the geographical divide of Japanese, but even the generational divide. And this came up with our blog response too. So I'm going to leave some of that for our discussion of the blog response. But it's something to think about. Okay, Kilohana, you brought up in your post about how after the Holocaust, which is often what the internment of Japanese Americans is, compared to Jewish people banded together to kind of reestablish their culture, because it was almost wiped out in Europe. And so Jews in Europe had to reach out to those in other countries, other continents, to help them reestablish their roots. And we didn't see Japanese get wiped out, right? There wasn't a genocide of Japanese, really. It was more a separation of them from the general public. And so they were able to hold on to their culture, kind of, as a matter of pride, right? But if you wanted to integrate back into society, you had to let it let certain aspects of it go. So totally different thing going on here. I liked the World War II, the Holocaust example, because it's kind of an interest of mine. Just the idea that we allow this to happen over and over and over, genocide, or even just anger at certain races. I mean, we say different things in history, never again, and then we look at what happened after September 11th with Muslims, and we're doing the same thing to them that we did to Japanese after Pearl Harbor. So kind of an interesting thing and a personal interest of mine, so I will have to keep that short. Otherwise, this video will go on for not 40 minutes this week, but more like an hour, so I'll stop there. A lot of you, this really fascinated me, a lot of you were pulling on your own family histories for this video response last week. So we had Amy, who was talking about her family's background as being Okinawan and Japanese, and I thought you did a good job of explaining how they're the same thing but not, right? It's like the idea of, I can't think of other ones, but they talk about similes and metaphors in literature, and a simile is a metaphor, but a metaphor is not a simile, is a saying. And so it's the same thing with Japanese and Okinawan. And Okinawan is Japanese, but a Japanese is not Okinawan, or something like that. Probably vice versa too, right? So the tensions, again, that existed within a single culture, right? You had the Naichi, I'm hoping I'm saying that right, I'm taking a page out of Amy's book. The Naichi were from the main islands of Japan, the interlands. The Okinawans were from a separate island, and so there's a separate but equal, or like you but not kind of idea going on here. So still got that divide between the different types of Japanese. Letitia gave us a nice lesson on Pearl Harbor. I really liked the photos on the phone. That was a great way to get around some of the fancy smancy technology stuff that some of you are able to do. So that was a great workaround and a nice way to teach us about Pearl Harbor. And by the way, Pearl Harbor is coming back up in the news again, because I think as far as the USS Arizona veterans, there are 5 left. I believe just in the last week another one of them passed away. So this year I think is the 75th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, so it's kind of a big deal. They're bringing them back again. They've been doing it every year, but 5 left. Sooner or later it's going to be, there are no more Pearl Harbor veterans, right? And then back to the family history. Dana, thank you so much for sharing with us. It was really, really interesting, and I'm so pleased that this helped you reconnect with some of your family history, and maybe help you through the grieving process. I've been through similar things with my family members. They pass away, you're given things of theirs, or you have things of theirs, and you can't bear to look at them until something like this brings you to wanting to go back and rehash things about them. And so I'm really glad that this was able to help you go back into that box of your grandfather's stuff, and to see that Purple Heart is pretty darn amazing. So thank you for sharing about your grandfather with the 442nd. And you two mentioned the generational divide with the way that we can't understand some of the things that they went through in that time. Mark too talked about the 442nd and Steve. So let's see. And Mark told us about the not slogan, but I guess it's a slogan, go for broke with the 442nd, that often gets, we hear go for broke on people on the mainland use it, but it really does come from the pidgin, right? This idea of give it all you got, right? Till the wheels fall off kind of thing. And then sharing the story of the Lost Battalion that was mentioned in passing, but now we have a lot more grounding in what that one's about. The territorial guard was Tristy's topic, and this one even ties to our author. If you read his bio, what was it, last week, or 2 weeks ago now, if you read his bio, it talks about how he was in the territorial guard, and he was one of those Japanese that was dismissed from it because Pearl Harbor hits and they think everyone in the territorial guard who's Japanese is a spy, right? So they had to dismiss all the Japanese soldiers, all the Japanese guardsmen, if that's a word, whether or not they had proof that they were spies. And then Natasha finished us out, or Natasha had us with the big five. And this one's really interesting because it's history, but we can see the results of what these guys did still today, right? You mentioned that Liberty House used to be Liberty House was a product of one of the big five companies, right? And Liberty House phased out, but it's now Macy's. Macy's took it over. Matson as well was what is the child, I guess you could call it, of one of those big five companies. And just recently, this was pretty cool for me. I don't know what I was doing. I might have been walking or driving, but I was down on Renton Road in Eva Beach. Plantation history, right? If you've been down Renton Road, so many of those buildings, those homes are in disrepair because they are historic structures that cannot be torn down or changed without special permission and paperwork and all that red tape stuff. So I was on Renton Road, and there's an old building next to what's now a park with a rec center, and it's in disrepair. It's not pretty to look at, but I happened to be looking at it for some reason the other day, and I noticed on the side there's a sign that says it was an Amtrak building. So it's pretty neat when you have the history right there in your neighborhood. And speaking of history in your neighborhood, tying in with the Japanese internment camps. So the interesting thing about those was that Hawaii didn't have many. They had some for kind of high-ranking Japanese officials, so priests and, doctors or anything like that. High-ranking people, but they didn't intern a lot of Japanese Americans in Hawaii, because if they did, as you can tell from the novel, a lot of the workforce would have just been shuffled off to internment camps. The plantations would have shut down, right? They had other workers of other races, but the Japanese population was pretty huge. So this idea that Hawaii kind of escapes some of that is really interesting to me, but we do actually have a former internment camp that is right, I'd say it's maybe like 10 minutes from UH West. It's on Old Fort Weaver Road. No one really goes down there for anything except to avoid traffic on regular Fort Weaver Road. But apparently in the overgrowth and brush back there is the ruins of what was once an internment camp, the Honouliuli internment camp. And they just recently, maybe in the last, 4 or 5 years, rediscovered it, and there's an effort going about to restore it as a historical artifact. And so I'll see if I can find like a newspaper article about that with some pictures for you guys. It's really interesting. We think that history is something that happened a long time ago, especially in Hawaii, where so much of the historical stuff has either lost its meaning or has disappeared. Disrepair, overgrowth, taken apart, whatever. And it's still there, right? You just have to hunt for it. So really good work with the videos. I hope you all watch them. I think that they would be immensely valuable just for the few minutes of getting some information on different things. And I think you all enjoyed doing these because I believe everyone's video was at least like 6, 7, 8 minutes long. So I think we're really enjoying this kind of research stuff. As far as the return to our explication of passages goes, we had the two choices of find either something on filial piety or plantation talk. And so the filial piety one goes back to, again, the generational, the geographical divide between the Japanese, right? We have Toshio, who is Nisei, and someone said, I didn't know what that meant, and I looked it up. Nisei, right? Second generation Japanese Americans. So these are the kids of the immigrants. The immigrants would be Issei. Same thing minus the I, or minus the N, sorry, not the I. Issei, first generation, Nisei, second generation, and then there was Kibe, which was a different one that's mentioned, if not already in the novel, it's mentioned later. This would be someone born in the U.S., a Japanese American born in the U.S., but sent to Japan for schooling, and then they come back when they're done with their schooling. So Issei, Nisei, and Kibe, if you're interested in those. But the generational differences really come out with this idea of filial piety. And so those of you that wrote on this chose generally the same passage or passages. We had the one with Toshio's brother sending him the $6,000 from a craps game where Toshio then paid off the family's debt. Was pretty much the one thing that we all talked about. It was centered around that event and then what happened afterwards with the barbershop and stuff. So a reminder, filial piety is the idea of respecting, obeying, and caring for one's elders. And it's a very central value to, I don't even think it's Japanese cultures, it's Asian and Pacific cultures in general, right? If you think about anyone, Filipinos are the same thing, right? Those of you that may have this family background. Lots of times you're taking care of grandma and grandpa. Hawaiian cultures, we're taking care of our elders. And sometimes not our elders, right? We've got extended family living in homes together. It's a Hawaii thing. On the mainland, right, lots of the ways they deal with elderly on the mainland is you send them to a nursing home or retirement community. Someone else takes care of them. In Hawaii, it's your responsibility. And again, this is general to Asian and Pacific cultures all over the place, right? So it's weird to see Toshio moving away from this. And so I pose the question to you guys, why do you think with his anger over it, right? That's the one thing we all talked about if we talked about filial piety. He's angry that he has to keep supporting his family. He's trying to make something of himself and he's getting held back because he has to supply his family with their needs first and then his. So if he's so angry about this, why do you think he continues to hold to this obligation? He has brothers who will pick up the slack, right? He's already got the one who sent the money. And he has the ability, if he hasn't already, he will in our reading this week, he has the ability to move away from the family, to move islands even. Why does he continue this value? And some of you mentioned he's at this crossroads, right? He is Japanese American, but believes himself to be more of the American part. So perhaps this filial piety is part of how he holds on to his family's culture, right? So really interesting stuff with that one, and we will talk more about I'll save this for the end. So the other option was plantation talk, right? The battle between plantation talk or pidgin and Haole talk or standard English, right? And a lot of you talked about it was Fujie, his wife, that is almost always the person who points out his speech, right? Toshio's speech. He speaks in pidgin. We get this, the whole novel's from his perspective, and it's in pidgin. So this idea that, again, he's at another crossroads. This time it's do I hold on to my plantation lifestyle, or do I move into, I'm now a American who is better than my plantation life, right? This is someone's words, I can't remember who, but they mentioned conflict between Toshio's own past and his family history. And Toshio has a conflict between his own past and family history, and trying to live in the modern society that has been howlified. I love that word, by the way, howlified. And then a lot of you making the connection that I hinted at in my video last week, the connection to Ragged Dick with his clothes. When he gets the new set of clothes, he holds on to the old ones for a while. Someone's words, just as Ragged Dick struggled with his change in costume and identity, we also see Tosh struggling with the idea of changing his language, which disagrees with his current identity, reluctant to become howlified. And someone's, I think this was, if I remember, this was Kilohana's closing paragraph to this explication was, perhaps we're getting a hinting at a character transformation. I don't know, I do know, but I'm going to let you guys figure this one out and see what you think is happening with this story. And a reminder, I think I mentioned this in a video couple weeks ago or last week. Plantation Boy is part of a 4-part series. It's part 3 of 4. And again, the books do not go in order. The first one is one of his brothers, and then it goes to his mother growing up, not growing up, but before World War II happens, and then it goes to him, and I think the last one is another brother or something like that. I've never read the other ones. So keep following along with the book. See how his character transforms or not. I don't know. You guys tell me. And then also think about, if you do see a transformation occur, how does it compare to what we saw with Ragged Dick? His transformation was very clear, right? It's a rags to riches story. Is Plantation Boy a rags to riches story as well? Do we get the same feeling at the end of it as we did for Ragged Dick? And you will get there. We'll do, I think we got another 2 to 3 weeks with this one. So keep plugging along. Keep giving me your responses. And again, I'm super thrilled with how you guys are responding to this one. So looking to this week then. So we're continuing with Plantation Boy, but we are also going back to our craft of research. So we left off, I think it was about 4 weeks ago, so a long time ago. Go back to your craft of research for a refresher if you need it. But we're going to tackle part 2, the prologue, which is a couple pages, chapter 3 and chapter 4. So this is quite a bit of reading in general you got this week, if you look at the schedule. So take your time. Plan it out. Don't wait until Saturday morning to try to read this. It's somewhere around 100, maybe like 90 to 100 pages of reading this week. But Plantation Boy's reading is quick, as I'm sure you guys have figured out now. Especially if you are like me and you read it out loud, it goes by a lot faster. But with Craft of Research, we are going to start thinking ahead to our next essay, or our last essay in this case, which is your big research paper. So let's look ahead to our blog response then. So your blog response is on these 2 chapters of Craft of Research. And what I'm asking you to do, chapter 3 talks about how you move from a topic to a research question. Chapter 4 builds on the research question part. But chapter 3 is really the most difficult part of this. So I am giving you a heads up on your essay assignment, this last essay. If you look at the blog page, I have it italicized and underlined for you. It says second paragraph on that page. The final essay prompt will ask you to examine the American dream from the research angle of your choice. And by research angle, I mean, like additional topics. So not just the American dream in general, but the American dream and superheroes, the American dream and sports, the American dream and television, how the American dream has changed from the 1950s to the 2000 teens. Okay, so the American dream and something is essentially what we're going for here. So what you're doing with your reading from Craft of Research this week in your blog is thinking ahead and trying to get some idea of where you might want to go with this project. And the way you're going to do that is by following these steps in chapter 3, where they have you go from an interest to a topic, a broad topic to a focused one, a focused topic to questions, and questions to a significance. So we got 4 steps to our blog response this week. They are there for you. They're detailed exactly what I want you to answer, but what I don't tell you to do is how you show me your answers to this thing. So this is not a formal response like we've been doing. This is not a paragraph, intro, body, conclusion, anything like that. This is a lot more informal. And so I mention right before I give you the actual steps that you'll follow, that I leave it up to you how you are going to go about doing this blog response. But you need to, in quote, show your work in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so if that means you put like step 1 from an interest to a topic, and you show me your interests, and then by like listing everything. So you have the American dream, ... and anything about the American dream you might want to know. It can just be a list. Doesn't need to be sentences this week, okay? And then step 2, you are going to add action words to your topic. So you can do the same list and add action words to it to go from a broad topic to one that's more focused. To go from a focused topic to questions, you're going to be doing some kind of preliminary research type stuff. So the options, the ideas your book gives you are looking at the history of your topic, its structure and composition, how it's categorized, turning positive questions into negative ones, and asking what if and questions suggested by other sources. So you can, again, list each of these things and then give me a couple sentences that talk about how you might answer some of these. And those are all on page 444, as I mentioned in the blog post. And then the last part is going to be the kind of big finale to this, going from questions to a significance, and the 3-part research question. So that's really your main goal here, is to get to that 3-part research question of, I am studying the American dream and blank, whatever that might be. And then the second part, because I want to find out what, why, or how, whatever. And the significance in order to help my reader better understand something. Okay? So we're working through all these steps so we can get to that final one. And once we get there, then I feel we'll all be at a good place once we get to that actual essay assignment. Okay? So look through that. Again, if you don't quite know how I want you to do this, come up with some kind of, if I did this, would that be okay? Shoot me an email about it and I will respond when I can. So that's the craft of research reading and assignment that goes with it. Your Plantation Boy reading is a lot this week compared to what you've been doing the past couple weeks. So we've got pages 47 to 104. Sorry, it's a quick read again, but I wanted us to be able to get through some more of this history stuff because we're looking at that stuff again. So I got a new list for you guys this week. So we've got events and people and places like the ILWU. I'm not going to tell you what that means. Look it up. Jack Hall, the Smith Act, the GI Bill, the Communist Red Scare, and I have in parentheses, there were 2 of these, so make sure you're looking at the right one if you're going to discuss this, and the Democratic Revolution of 1954, which we don't quite get to in the book, but it's coming up in the next few chapters after this week's reading, so I'm prepping us for it. So you're doing something quite similar to last week, where you're going to research not just one of these events, though. I want you to research all of them. And you will see why. They're all connected, every single one. Right? Everything is connected in one gigantic mess. Okay? And then I mentioned there are other people, events that I don't list. You may end up researching just because they come up a lot. Okay? And then you're going to give us your history lesson in your video response this week that explains how these events and people are tied together. And then part 2 to this Discuss how you see these events affecting the characters in the novel and even by extension their real-life counterparts, the Japanese or Japanese Americans, and in essence all plantation workers in Hawaii at this time. But referring specifically to the book, how did all of these events and all that stuff influence the lives of the characters in the story? Okay, and then lastly, consider our author's choice, Murayama's choice, to write Plantation Boy in the genre of historical fiction. This is defined on dictionary.com as the genre of literature, film, etc., compromising narratives that take place in the past and are characterized chiefly by an imaginative reconstruction of historical events and personages. In layman's terms, it's taking true events and some true people, but adding some element of fiction to it. So our element of fiction in Plantation Boy is Toshio and his family, right? They're representing other people, but they are not tied directly to someone else. Their story, their family are not real, okay? What do we gain from the fictionalization aspect of the novel that we wouldn't have if it were nonfiction or entirely historically true, historically accurate? What might we lose by reading it as nonfiction instead of fiction? Okay, so this is building, as last week was too, we're building towards some of the topic prompts for our next essay, which is going to be very different from the first. So it's going to be, again, here's your heads up for this, it's coming next week, I think it is. It's going to be much more source/research based than the first one, but not to the extent that your last essay will be. So I will ask you to look up some sources, and we'll talk about finding sources in the coming weeks as we prep for this essay. But it's going to be finding that balance between the history, the real events that happened, and the fictional part in the book. It's going to be a challenge. I will tell you, there has been all of one source that I've been able to find that directly references Plantation Boy, and it talks about the plantation mentality. So I'll be posting that when we do our discussion of sources. Just so I can get it all to you guys. Maybe we'll use that in an assignment next week. Okay? But follow the steps for your video response this week. We're looking at the power and politics, so you'll notice that all of the events that I ask you to look at, the people, the places, events, are tied to the politics and power dynamics in 1940 to 1960 Hawaii. There was an interesting shift that occurred in politics, and you will learn all about it when you research this week. Alright, let's see, anything else I need to talk about? So read your craft of research, read Plantation Boy, do your video response, your blog, and then we will move forward in the coming weeks with our essay, getting some ideas for research. By the way, if you guys are looking at the different pictures I put up with the blogs and the schedules and all of that kind of stuff, I work really hard to try to find things that might be, visually tied to whatever we're discussing that week. So the schedule page has a picture that was in the Honolulu Advertiser when there was protests against the Big Five. And this was tied to a dock worker strike on the mainland that is mentioned in our story. Our blog page, video response page has a picture of a newspaper article tied to the Democratic Revolution in 1954. So that will hint to you what that was all about. And then the Week 8 blog page has a nice little graphic that demonstrates the idea of going from a general topic, to a research question. So it says King Arthur, and then let's see, King Arthur and why are there so many different King Arthur stories, I think is what it says. So check those out. I don't just put those there randomly. I always try to make some actual link to what they're posted with. Okay, and I do have more grades that will be going up. I have your grades from last week, and I'm still working on those essays, so be patient with me, and those should be up sometime within the next week and a half maybe. Okay, so until next week, keep up the great work. I look forward to hearing more about what you're thinking of Plantation Boy and getting some ideas of where you want to go with your final research paper. Thinking ahead, getting prepared. Halfway through the semester. Alright, so have a good rest of your week. Thank you for your patience again with my video getting up. Have a good one.